Can I ask you something? A seductive male voice questions. Embarrassed, a surprised female voice responds that, yes. We discover that the owner of the voice is a man with beautiful hair and blue eyes. And our protagonist being interrogated is a beautiful lady with pink hair and blue eyes. Embarrassed by the man's presence, she starts to laugh softly. But the man moves even closer to her, resting his hand on the wall she is leaning against. In her mind, she is in a panic, certain that her heart will not withstand so much beauty. He shows her a white flower and rhetorically asks if she has ever heard of the ribloom. And the woman, clearly knowing what it is about, starts to sweat cold. The handsome man continues explaining that there is a legend which says that drinking the nectar of the ribloom flower can cure any disease, and that she has probably heard about this legend since it is quite popular in the kingdom. Extremely tense, she confirms that she has heard of it while nervously laughing. With a smile, he comments that his former self would never believe in such a fairy tale. Then he pins the flower in her hair and, still smiling, says that this is not the real problem. What truly intrigues him is knowing why she gave him that flower. Holding her chin a bit more roughly, he stares at her closely and reveals in a serious tone that the fact that she is sick should be a secret. So he was curious about how the daughter of a count would know something that even her brothers, princes of the kingdom, do not know. The poor pink-haired woman goes into total panic and starts to stutter while thinking of a response. She then says that she accidentally tripped over that flower. It was just a coincidence. But he does not believe her answer for even a second. After all, this flower only blooms in the ice temple that is far to the north, and that the only person who had access to the temple was the saint of the legend, 100 years ago. At that moment, our protagonist realizes that she got a bit carried away trying to help the man, and that clearly her excuse would not hold. He continues his little accusation, saying that she gave him a flower she found by accident, but that was exactly what he was secretly looking for. Leaning in closer to her, he whispers in her ear, because the man then pulls the ribbon that holds her hair, saying that if she is planning something bad with it, he will have to punish her. Turning redder than a tomato, she starts to apologize, begging him to please forgive her. Her heart races and she realizes she has reached her limit. Then we see our protagonist faint on the floor. She tells us that her second life ended in the blink of an eye, but she had no regrets because it was a life in which she could love her favorite character and give her best for him to find happiness. The scene cuts to a woman walking tiredly home after an exhausting day at work. This is our protagonist in her first life. Her name was Asuka Sato. She was 30 years old and an elementary school teacher. She is almost at the bus station, but then realizes she just missed her bus home. The woman tries to run to catch the bus, but the effort is in vain, and the worst part is that it was the last bus of the day. She looks at her phone, frustrated, wondering if she should call a taxi. Although the taxi would take only 10 minutes to get home, she would have to spend 2,000 yen. While opening a game on her phone, she tells us that she would much rather spend that money on her favorite character in the game than on a taxi. Prince of Jewels Weaving Love is her favorite Otome game, and she happily spends her hard-earned money on the character she loves the most. And with that thought, she slides her finger on the screen, spending 3,200 yen in the game store. She watches anxiously as the character roulette spins on her screen, opening a beautiful, excited smile when it stops spinning, revealing that she just got a rare card of her favorite character. She quickly puts on her headphones, eager to listen to the voice that came with the rare card. Listening to that masculine and seductive voice makes her feel much better, and then she starts walking cheerfully home. The protagonist tells us that when she was little, she watched a drama that inspired her to become a teacher. She imagined herself surrounded by her students sharing fun moments while watching them grow into good people in the future. But the reality was brutally different from that. The amount of work was enormous, and she didn't even have time to eat properly. To make matters worse, she had to deal with the constant demands from the students' parents, causing stress and exhaustion to start piling up. It seemed that no matter how dedicated she was to her work, her salary never increased while the overtime always did. The exhaustion was so great that she ended up dozing off a few times in the bathtub and almost drowning. But one day, something changed. Something on her phone caught her attention. A video that she stumbled upon would be the reason she managed to wake up every day and go to work. Our protagonist is quite dramatic. The video was a clip from an anime based on a popular Otome game where Alexandrite, her favorite character, was in action. Both the anime and the game told a story about a reverse harem where three handsome princes fall in love with the same woman. Among these three princes was Alexandrite, a beautiful man with blue hair, kind and elegant, who quickly became her favorite. But unfortunately, he had a sad story as he suffered from an incurable disease, and his tragic love for the story's heroine named Marin captivated our protagonist even more. Marin had an exaggerated background. She was a saint, the daughter of a count, and a candidate for queen. But that didn't matter because the most important thing was that she was extremely cute. After watching that video, our protagonist began consuming everything related to that franchise and also started playing the game. And despite spending quite a bit of money quickly, our protagonist didn't seem to mind spending on her favorite since he was the reason she could endure her job. It was almost as if her favorite character's happiness was her happiness, and when she spent money on him, she felt alive. Honestly, this thought is quite problematic. But since it's just a fictional story and serves to show how much the protagonist admires Alexandrite, I'll let it slide. She smiles tenderly, thinking of her beloved Alexandrite. And as she walks home listening to his voice, she mentally thanks him for being created and existing. Little did she know that her happiness was about to be shaken on the day of the final episode of the anime. On the day of the episode, our protagonist had a hectic day at work, and in the last few days, she had stayed up late numerous times because of work. Even so, she managed to be free in time to watch the long-awaited episode. In the game, she always managed to find him by spending money. But today, she was excited to watch the last episode of the anime. So she loaded up on caffeine to stay awake and memorize every detail of her favorite's heroic moments. But then, her world collapsed. She looked at the TV in total panic as Marin's voice told Alex to hold on a little longer. Alex, with a trembling and weak voice, said that he had always loved Marin and would love her forever. Then we see on the TV the image of Alex lying on Marin's lap in his final moments, confessing his feelings before departing. Our protagonist panicked at the sight of her favorite leaving. She screamed while crying for him not to perish. But her screams were in vain, as the last episode of the anime ended, and her favorite had a tragic ending. Because of this, she cried copiously all night until her eyes were swollen and her voice became hoarse. And the worst part was that after Alex passed away, his beloved Marine married his greatest rival in love. It was unbelievable that her favorite had such a bad ending. He didn't deserve that. While crying, she tried to understand why he had to end up like this, and if there was any way to save him. With this strong thought in mind, she fell asleep. And when she opened her eyes again, she realized she was in a different place. She got up, bringing her hand to her face to ease the brightness as her eyes adjusted. And as she moved, she wondered why her back hurt so much. When her vision finally cleared, she turned and saw her reflection in a store window. A beautiful woman with pink hair and blue eyes. Upon realizing that the woman was her own reflection, she was startled, stepping back in surprise. She looks around more calmly, seeing a Victorian-style city, with people in old-fashioned clothes and carriages. Very different from the world she is used to. She looks around, trying to understand what the hell is happening, until something familiar catches her attention. A beautiful, imposing castle. A castle she has seen countless times. The castle from her favorite game. She looks on, still in disbelief. But then someone calls her. Only the voice that called her is strangely familiar, which leaves our protagonist even more surprised. She turns in the direction of the voice that is getting closer and closer to her. And in front of her stands none other than Alexandrite, her favorite, there in the flesh. She blushes as she still incredulously observes the handsome man in front of her. Our protagonist stammers in panic, still unable to believe that Alex is right in front of her. Alex, concerned, reaches out his hand towards her, asking if she is okay since she looks a bit pale. Seeing that, she imagines that maybe it's all a dream, or perhaps some virtual reality technology for her game. She tries to convince herself of these theories, and if she is right, then when she touches her favorite's hand, her hand should pass through his. But instead of passing through, her hand touches Alex's warm hand. He feels the warmth, the skin, and even the subtle pulse at the tips of his fingers. There's no denying it anymore. Somehow, all of this was real, and the man in front of her was indeed her beloved Alexandrite. Alex, noticing that the young woman isn't responding, asks again if she is okay. Worried, he holds her hand more firmly, assuming that she is feeling so unwell that she can't even respond. But Alex's approach made the protagonist's heart and mind go into a blue screen. She screams, "What?" while quickly stepping away from him. Still stammering, she begins to say that someone like her has no right to touch him. She runs away, apologizing for someone as insignificant as her daring to touch him. Poor Alex stands there, watching, not understanding what just happened. And the young woman with pink hair continues running aimlessly, mentally wondering what the hell is going on. Honestly, I don't understand what more proof she needs that she has entered the game or the anime. While running, she notices the world she is in again. The carriages, the architecture of the houses, and everything exactly as she was used to seeing in the game. But how did this happen? What is really happening? She is clearly confused, but running with her mind racing causes her to trip and crash to the ground in the middle of a square, drawing the attention of everyone around her. But when she gets up, complaining about the pain of falling face first on the ground, panic takes over her again. After all, in a dream, she shouldn't be feeling pain. This can only mean that she is really inside the world of the Jewel Prince Spinning Love, her favorite game. My god, that name is so cheesy. Thoughtful, she admits that although the reincarnation genre in another world is popular in anime and manga, she never imagined that something like this could actually happen. She wondered if that genre was created by people who, somehow, had reincarnated. But her head hurt from the fall. which only proves that what she is experiencing is indeed real, which means that Alexandrite really talked to her earlier and she even touched his hand. Thinking about this makes her have a classic nosebleed. She can't believe she is breathing the same air as Alex. Imagining this as a divine reward, she thanks God for it. And finally, she lets go of why all this is happening and decides to just enjoy the opportunity. But then a dark memory comes to her mind. The last episode of the anime where her beloved perished. Then panic takes over her again. Quickly, she starts looking around to try to identify what part of the game she is in. Looking at the landscape and the weather, she calculates that it must be spring now. And remembering Alex's appearance a few minutes ago, she concludes that she is at the beginning of the game. Looking around again, she recognizes the square she is in. Then she remembers that this is the square where Onyx, Alex's rival, and Marine meet for the first time. Both in the anime and in the game, this is the place where Onyx saves Marine and their relationship begins to develop romantically. And for some reason, our protagonist believes that if Marine and Onyx end up together, it means that Alexandrite will die. That's why she is determined to do something about it. Her thoughts are interrupted by Marine's voice asking someone to stop immediately. Turning around, she sees the scene where Marine is being harassed by 3 brutes. Marine tries to argue with the men, saying that she was just distributing bread to the needy. But they simply ignore what she is saying and continue to bother her. Our protagonist realizes that this is the beginning of the event where Onyx and Marine meet. Therefore, this only means that Onyx must be about to appear. She starts to look for him and quickly spots the handsome man with black hair and purple eyes. She begins to think about what to do to prevent the scene from happening. After all, in her mind, she truly believes that if Onyx and Marine end up together, her favorite will perish. She starts doing various mental calculations to prevent the meeting, until she comes up with a plan that she believes is foolproof. She runs to the nearest boutique, buys some clothes, and quickly changes. Meanwhile, in the square, a small crowd has formed at the spot where Marine was being harassed. Onyx, noticing the commotion, starts to head in her direction to understand what is happening. But a presence coming from behind him catches his attention for a moment. But as soon as he turns to see who it is, the person passes quickly by him. One of the men tormenting Marine yanks her roughly by the arm, causing the bread she was carrying to fall to the ground, and she looks helplessly at the people nearby, asking for help. And then our protagonist approaches in confusion, shouting for the men to stop that immediately. Determined to protect the happiness of her dear Alexandrite, the young woman appears wearing extravagant clothes and makeup. With a judging look, she orders the men to stop their vulgar actions. Everyone looks surprised in the direction of the woman, trying to understand what is happening. Our protagonist's plan is to take on the role of the villain and use that to destroy the heroine's relationship with Onyx. And with that, make Marine get closer to Alex, thus supporting the romance of her favorite character and ensuring his survival. She laughs wickedly as she mentally goes over her plan. Moreover, she intends to be a citizen of this new world who will pay her taxes as a way to give more support to Alex. She will spare no effort to make her beloved Alex a king. Returning from her thoughts, she smiles, satisfied with her villainous entrance, while everyone continues to look at her suspiciously. But then Marine seems to recognize her and calls her Miss Arianel. This surprises our protagonist for a minute, but then she looks around, searching for the said Miss. Realizing that Marine is looking in her direction, she points to herself and questions if she is Arianel. Marine nods, causing the protagonist to raise her fan, embarrassed by the unexpected fact that she and the heroine know each other. Marine, worried, asks if everything is okay since she froze as soon as she heard her name. Our protagonist's plan has gone down the drain. She never imagined she would reincarnate in a body that knows Marine. And worse, she had no idea who Arianel was. She swore she had entered the body of a random extra from the game. Marine takes a step forward, trying to approach Arianel. But one of the men grabs her wrist. Twisting Marine's arm, he is clearly irritated by all that interruption. Arianel comes back to her senses, realizing that despite the unusual discoveries, the problem with the bad characters has not yet been resolved. But then a maid suddenly appears, shouting for Lady Arianel and delivering a flying kick to the thug holding Marine's arm, causing the thug to be completely knocked out. The maid looks at the 2 remaining thugs with a threatening gaze. She quickly advances, knocking one of them out, and punches the other squarely in the face, resolving the problem with the thugs in less than a minute, while the 2 women look on, impressed. Arianel wonders who this woman is and how she is so strong. The maid turns to the protagonist and with tear-filled eyes, calling again for Miss Arianel, jumps in her direction, giving her a strong hug and saying that she was dying of worry. She keeps complaining that she had only gone to buy a crepe at Miss Arianel's request, but as soon as she took her eyes off her lady for a brief moment, she disappeared. And when she finally found her, she saw those damn thugs bothering her, which made her very furious. While grumbling, she places Arianel on her shoulders. The maid then apologizes for the commotion with Miss Marine. And happy to have found her lady, she informs Arianel that they are returning to the estate. and our protagonist is lost, not understanding where they are going and who this strong woman is. As she is carried away by the maid, she sees Onyx approaching Marine in the distance. Realizing that she has miserably failed in her plan, the maid ignores her lady's agitation and simply places her in the carriage back to the mansion. Feet appear, observing the scene. Alex, who is also watching the commotion, notices the crest on the protagonist's carriage. He recognizes the crest as belonging to the noble family of the Night Deer, and thus assumes that the pink-haired woman is a noble from that family. A man approaches Alex, calling him Prince Alexandrite, and asking what he is doing in a place like that, saying he has been looking for him everywhere. Alex apologizes to the man, calling him Harry. He then says that he would like to ask Harry a favor. At Arianel's family mansion, a doctor informs the maid that her lady shows signs of amnesia, and that she probably fell and hit her head while she was alone. Nadia, the maid, cries, blaming herself for not taking proper care of her lady while her parents were away. Arianel tells us that she only responded that she didn't know to all the doctors, and now they believe she has amnesia, and that it all started in the carriage to the mansion. When she asked the maid what her name was, as soon as she said that, Nadia went into total despair. As soon as they arrived at the mansion, doctors were called, and they soon began asking her various questions, but she couldn't answer any of them. In all the reincarnation mangas she read, the person always inherited the memories of the body. But it seems that our protagonist was unlucky because she has no idea about Arianel's past. The maid continues crying and blaming herself for what happened to her lady. Worried, Arianel asks her to please calm down a little. But the extremely formal way in which her lady addresses her makes her panic even more. Arian asks her to introduce herself again, as her memories should surely return soon. Then the maid formally introduces herself as Nadia. Arianel repeats the maid's name and asks her to tell her more about herself. Holding a huge hammer, Nadia says that maybe another blow to the head will make her lady's memory return, but Arianel obviously refuses to use that method. Nadia then begins to tell Arianel various things. She and Marine had their debut in society on the same day, but they only talked a little and are not close. Furthermore, Arianel has always had weaker health since birth, and on the day of her debut, she had a high fever, having to return to her mansion shortly after arriving at the party. And since then, she has not been able to attend many balls. For this reason, despite being from a prestigious family, she has not received many marriage proposals yet. And practically that was all the useful information she managed to gather. Because the rest of the conversation was Nadia emphasizing how lovely and angelic Arianel was as a child. Despite this, knowing more about who she was now was extremely important. And although it seems a bit wrong, she thanks the real Arianel, as this amnesia story is the perfect excuse. And now that this little problem is resolved, she needs to focus on preventing the death of her beloved Alex. One of the mansion's servants enters the room, informing that a letter from the royal family has just arrived for the young lady. Arianel receives the letter and realizes that it is actually an invitation to the royal ball. And she is extremely surprised to have been invited to a possible event of the game. Meanwhile, at the royal palace, two princes of the kingdom are conversing. The blonde one asks Onyx if he has heard the rumors about their brother, Alex. Onyx says he hasn't been listening, so the blonde says that apparently Alex sent a personal invitation to a woman, inviting her to the next ball, and that it's not like Alex to do something like that. We find out that the blonde's name is Citrine Pendragon, and he is the third prince of the kingdom. But Onyx, the second prince of the kingdom, doesn't seem very interested in his older brother's love life. But Citrine reminds his brother that soon they will all have to choose a bride, whether he likes it or not. Onyx gives a serious and slightly irritated look to his brother. Citrine retorts with a look saying that his brother doesn't need to make such a scary face, and that he also doesn't care much about the type of woman Alex is interested in. At the same time, in Alex's room, the sound of a painful, labored breath resonates throughout the room. Alex is sitting on his bed, breathing heavily. He places his hand on his chest, trying to ease the pain, and wonders if the medication he received today from the church is already losing its effect. Sweating from the pain, he wonders if this is a sign that his time on this earth is coming to an end. He remembers the encounter he had with the young woman with pink hair, her various curious expressions, and her cute yet strange scent at the same time. He leans his back against the headboard of the bed and wishes he can at least create good memories at the ball. Balls are places where high society people gather. Nobles, desperate to maintain their status and wealth, participated in conversations surrounded by a glamorous atmosphere and elegant music. Amid laughter and whispers, they exchanged the latest news from society, gossip, and even closed important deals. Decisions about marriage also naturally formed part of this, but this was not limited to the world of the game. Balls were also events present in reality, but she had never participated in something like this in her old life. But the day of her personal debut had finally arrived, and today was the ball, and also the day that marked the end of the introductory part of the game. The event, Ball of Destiny. After the player meets all three main characters of the game, this is the first major event that occurs. First, Marine must interact with the three princes during the ball. And then, out of nowhere, the king decrees that she must choose one of the princes, and that is when the game truly begins. And her chosen one will become king. Despite the absurd decree, it makes sense for an Otomi game. And all the main characters are breathtaking. Marine, despite being confused, accepts her fate and follows the story of the game, but until Chapter 2, all players follow the same path. Depending on the level of affection gained by a specific prince by the end of the second chapter, she didn't want to fail, so she even used a step-by-step guide. All the other routes, except for her favorite characters, were completely ignored. But in the anime, things were not so simple, and the official storyline culminated in the tragic end of her favorite. But who the hell cared about the official story? Our protagonist was determined to rewrite the story so that her favorite would have a happy ending at all costs. Night falls, and the time for the ball arrives. And soon the venue is already filled with various well-dressed people and music. And some nobles gossip about a woman who just arrived, wondering who her father might be. They gossip about Arianel, who arrives at the ball wearing an extravagant low-cut red dress. The other women continue gossiping loudly about how vulgar the protagonist is dressing. Nadia, who is accompanying Arya, remembers that earlier she begged her lady to wear a delicate dress in a lilac shade, but she refused. Arya was determined to find Marine. She remembered that in the game, the ball event itself was simple. Marine remained leaning against the wall of the dance hall, observing the movement, and then was approached by the princes one by one. In the game, the level of affection changed according to the choices made during conversations. She had memorized all the decisive points of this event. So if the anime follows the same development, Marine must be in that direction. While searching for Marine, she remembers that according to Marine's background, this ball will be her first public appearance since her debut. The debutante ball was an event where young noble ladies were presented to society. And this included Marine, who was in training to become a saint, even though she was being kept hidden in the church to prevent her divine powers from being misused. Perhaps that's why almost no noble had met Marine. In the anime, when she was introduced as a possible bride for the princes, all the extras around were in an uproar, filled with excitement. And there she was. Arya had finally found the future wife of her favorite character. At this point, she thought it would be best to eliminate all events that could lead to any path other than the romance between her favorite character and Marine. Arya gives a discreet smile in Marine's direction as she approaches her, and Marine responds with a beautiful smile. She was excited to have found Marine so quickly. It meant that now she only needed to play her role as the villain and completely obstruct the path of anyone who wasn't her favorite. The single nobles at the ball looked at the two beautiful ladies, enchanted by their beauty. But as soon as any of them tried to approach, Arya shot them a look of hatred and disapproval, making them back off. However, this proved to be extremely tiring, and both Marine and Nadia suggested that Arya rest for a bit, but she insisted that she was fine. Worried, Marine went to get a drink for Arianel. Arya became concerned because if Marine stepped away now, there would be no way to know when she would encounter someone other than her favorite. But Marine quickly disappeared into the crowd, and gives a half smile in Marine's direction, making her feel slightly uncomfortable. The woman then trips, spilling the entire wine glass on Marine. Arya, watching from afar, notes that a scene like this didn't happen in the game or the anime, so she wonders why this was happening. The woman gave a fake smile and murmured an insincere apology, and then, with a look full of disdain, claimed that Marine was probably too busy chasing after men to notice her presence and ended up bumping into her. The woman began to withdraw while the others watching there started to laugh discreetly at the situation. Arya approached and ordered the woman to stop immediately. While helping Marine to get up, she demanded that the woman apologize properly since she was clearly in the wrong. The woman said she had already apologized, but Arya retorted that clearly that wasn't an apology, as it lacked sincerity. The woman let out a small huff, saying, "Why should she care about that? Oh? Are you telling me to be quiet while someone I care about gets hurt?" Arya said. She continued asking the woman if she happened to know who that young lady was. Arya approached, asserting that the woman surely had no idea that she had just offended a duchess. And the woman looked clearly worried upon hearing this. Seemingly savoring the tension in the air, Arya whispered in the woman's ear, "I wonder what your family would think if they knew you acted so rudely towards a duchess." Noticing the desperation in the woman's eyes, Arya smiled victoriously. Quickly, the woman bowed towards Marine, sincerely apologizing for her rudeness, and asked if the young lady forgave her. Marine was somewhat incredulous at the whole scene and simply said yes. The woman then looked angrily at Arya, questioning if that was enough. Arya looked at her with disdain, saying that she did a good job. But to the woman's surprise, Arya continued speaking, warning her to remember that one day the woman's ignorance would be the reason for her own ruin. Therefore, she should educate herself so that this doesn't happen. Suddenly, the woman's features were of complete panic. Arya didn't understand the reason for the sudden change and questioned the woman about what was happening, and the woman just pointed to something behind Arianel. Arianel then turned in the direction the woman was pointing, curious. Then she came face to face with Onyx, Prince Citrine, and her favorite Alexandrite, standing right behind her, and apparently they had seen the whole scene that just happened. Arya was very surprised. She had prepared to deal with one prince at a time, as in the game. She had prepared and rehearsed all night for this, but she never imagined she would have to deal with all three princes at the same time. She was clearly neither mentally nor emotionally prepared for this. She felt cold sweat from the unexpected situation, mentally wishing that the gods of planning and strategy illuminate her mind. Onyx walks past Arya, completely ignoring her and extending his hand towards Marine, asking if she is okay. Marine blushes discreetly, saying that she is fine while reaching out to lean on Onyx's hand. Our protagonist quickly realizes what is happening and knows she needs to stop this at all costs, grabbing Onyx's hand before Marine can. With a tense look, she assures him that Lady Marine is fine and that he shouldn't worry. Citrine interrupts the moment, commenting that the two should change clothes as quickly as possible because they look terrible. Arya then remembers that Marine's dress is still soaked with wine. The image of Nadia begging Arya to wear another dress comes to her mind. Arya then says she has an outfit that Marine can wear. But in the middle of the sentence, Alex comes up behind her and lifts her by the waist, pulling her out of Onyx's way. He then whispers in her ear that she should join them. She turns to look at the owner of the voice that whispered in her ear and finds the handsome Alex smiling at her. This causes our poor protagonist to freeze in embarrassment. And out of nowhere, we see Asuka's face. She is sitting in a school chair in the middle of nowhere. But the environment slowly begins to shape around her into a familiar place. The classroom where Asuka was just a child, the children in Asuka's class were bothering her because apparently she showed interest in one of the boys in her class, saying that the boy should feel bad for having someone so ugly liking him. Poor Asuka starts to cry, saying that she knows she will never be loved by anyone and begs the children to stop laughing at her. Our protagonist screams an apology and wakes up startled, sitting up quickly in bed. Still breathing heavily, she realizes that it was all just a nightmare. She wipes the tears from her eyes while mentally struggling to believe that even after so much time, she still dreams about the things that happened in the past. Someone beside her offers her a glass of water, and Arya promptly accepts. She drinks the glass of water without thinking, while we see Alex smiling beside her. Feeling a little calmer, she pauses for a minute and then wonders where she is. And who gave her the glass of water? Alex, seeing how quickly she drank the water, kindly asks if she would like another glass. Arya freezes, finally starting to realize what is happening. She recognizes the voice that is kindly offering her a glass of water, and it belongs to Alex. Entering a mix of embarrassment and anxiety, not understanding how she ended up in this situation. Alex, whether intentionally or not, moves closer to her, analyzing her flushed face and questioning if she might have a fever. This causes our poor protagonist to panic, quickly distancing herself from Alex while trying to calm her heart. But she realizes that her panic has made her go beyond the edge of the bed, so she just closes her eyes, waiting for the impact of the fall. However, Alex quickly catches her, pulling her close to him and preventing her from falling. He looks at her with concern, asking if she got hurt, and if she is in pain anywhere. The gentle voice of her favorite character and the warmth of his body so close to hers make her blush. And quickly Arya brings her hand to her face, trying to contain the possible nosebleed that is about to happen. She tries to calm her heart that is beating intensely, but Alex doesn't help by getting even closer to her and hugging her. Arya practically begs him to let her go, but Alex, worried, doesn't understand that she is just embarrassed and says that she probably shouldn't be feeling unwell again. He picks her up in his arms, carrying her like a princess, and starts to take her back to bed, stating that she needs to rest a little more. Arya can hardly think straight, being so close to her beloved Alex, and being so near. She notices that just like his personality, his skin also seems perfect. Alex explains that earlier she fainted in the ballroom. So worried, he brought her to this room so she could rest and recover. Arianel then senses a fragrance coming from Alex that reminds her of something. Earlier, still somewhat groggy, she remembers having felt the same pleasant aroma. The poor Arya freaks out upon realizing that not only did she faint in front of her favorite, but he also had to carry her there. She apologizes to Alex for the incident she just remembered, but he gently places her on the bed and puts his hand on her forehead to check if she has a fever. He asks her not to exert herself too much when she isn't feeling well, and that she seemed to be in pain even while sleeping, which is why he was worried about her. He gently caresses Arianel's face, making her heart race even faster. Alex looks at her with genuine concern in his eyes, asking her to stay there and rest a little, and that he will call her personal doctor to examine her. Arya feels she has reached her limit and desperately looks for a distraction, trying to avoid the embarrassing nosebleed that is about to happen. And to her luck, the bedroom door opens, and Citrine enters the room. Seeing the somewhat strange situation in the room with Alex sitting, leaned towards Arya, while she covers her nose and mouth with her hands. But for Arya, Citrine is her savior, the perfect distraction she needed to calm her heart, since she has zero interest in him. Citrine looks a bit irritated, as he has never in his life received such an emotionless look. Irritated, he questions Arya why she is looking at him that way, to which she replies that she is just focusing her mind and that he shouldn't worry. Hearing this, he wonders if there is any woman capable of maintaining concentration while looking at his face. After all, he had a face more beautiful than any national treasure, a face that is born only once every 10,000 years, a beauty that drove women crazy. So he wonders what the hell that woman is. Despite clearly having wounded Citrine's ego, Arya's plan seems to have worked, and she finally calms down looking at him. Alex looks at Citrine and questions if something is wrong, which makes the poor girl's heart race a little again, causing her to stand up without looking around, focusing only on the blonde's face to calm down again. Arya realizes that she was so focused on calming down that she hadn't noticed that the handsome man in front of her was probably the third prince of the kingdom. Citrine, irritated, looks at Arya saying that he can't believe she had the courage to wear such an outdated and tasteless dress to the ball, and that she, as a noble, should know how to choose her clothes better, especially for important events like that. His attitude only confirms to Arya that he is the third prince, Citrine Pendragon, the only son of the second queen. His face is so beautiful that it is often mistaken for that of a woman, and there is even a scene in the anime where he dresses as one. His personality is arrogant and narcissistic. She has never been interested in him, as the character is portrayed as being the same age as her students. And she has no idea what events or actions he might be involved in. Since he is as immature as the students she used to teach, she decides to show him the appropriate attitude for this situation. Smiling, she says that she likes the dress, so she sees no problem in wearing it. Citrine looks at her, saying he is disappointed that she is such a stubborn woman and doesn't listen to what he says. The sharp tongue of the spoiled third prince slightly irritates the protagonist, which only confirms to her that he could never be her favorite. But Citrine ignores Arya's look and tells her to hurry up and put on the dress he chose for her, as he could no longer stand looking at someone with such a disordered sense of fashion. The maid who brought the dress approaches Arya, informing her that she will help her change. But then Alex interrupts the conversation, demanding that Citrine apologize to the lady for his rude comments, and that he thinks she looks beautiful just the way she is. Citrine looks at his brother, incredulous at what he just heard, questioning if he really finds such a striking face and makeup attractive. Alex retorts that, to start with, he never believed that external beauty was the most important thing in a woman. With that, the atmosphere between the brothers becomes a bit more tense. Only at that moment, someone enters the room and a soft voice calls for Lady Arya. Marine has just entered the room and seems happy to find Arya. She is wearing a beautiful lilac dress, which makes our protagonist quite excited. Quickly, she approaches Marine to analyze the girl's dress up close, blushing, mesmerized by the heroine's beauty. But besides that, it was also the dress for a special event between the heroine and her favorite character. So I was very happy to see the dress in person so early in the story. But her happiness is short-lived when she hears Onyx's voice approaching and realizes that he and Marine seem to be close. She reminds us that this is Onyx Pendragon, the second prince of the kingdom, and also the rival in love of her favorite character in the story. She doesn't like him because, to her, he is just pretending to be a simple and kind person to get close to Marine. And mainly because in the end, Onyx ends up stealing Marine from Alex. The biggest problem is that the rival is Marine's childhood friend, and from their first meeting, it was already clear that he liked her. And that a story of childhood friends turning into lovers is a solid background appreciated by many. And to make matters worse, the official plot of the anime further strengthened that classic couple. The bond between them was too powerful. Irritated, she silently cursed the rival while thinking of ways to prevent their romance. Meanwhile, Onyx approached her and said he was looking for her. Marine lowered her gaze and apologized softly. He responded with a calm smile and a loving look, saying it was all right, that he had just been worried for no reason. And to our protagonist's despair, a cute moment between Onyx and Marine seems to be unfolding quite naturally. Marine, noticing the prince's gaze, asks what is happening, and he, embarrassed, replies that the dress looks very good on her. The heroine then asks if perhaps Onyx prepared this dress especially for her. Meanwhile, our protagonist suffers seeing how quickly their relationship is evolving. Onyx confirms that he chose the dress and says he is happy that she liked it. Marine, with flushed cheeks, thanks him for the dress. And Arya's despair only increases, realizing the power of the official couple of the anime, as they seem more like a couple that just started dating than just childhood friends. But Arya does not intend to give up so soon, and she begins to take action, interrupting the couple's conversation. But she knows that if they have a dance together, the relationship between the two will only grow, so she needs to prevent that at all costs. Arya then apologizes to Onyx and says that she should be the one accompanying Marine, but he doesn't seem to understand what she means by that. She then explains that if he hasn't noticed, some noble women seem to be irritated by Marine's presence. And if he, a prince, stays by her side, It might make the noblewomen even more irritated and jealous, causing them to bother her again. But unlike him, she, his friend, can easily fend off the envious women. She takes Marine's hand and asks her to please stay by her side. The heroine, in turn, is touched by her friend's concern. Little does she know that Arya is doing this with other intentions in mind. Alex approaches Arya, saying he disagrees with what she just said. He looks at Arya with concern, reminding her that she fainted earlier and that it would be wiser to rest instead of returning to the ball. Upon hearing this, Marine, agreeing with Alex, insists that Arya rest. Arya tries to reassure everyone, saying that she is already feeling perfectly fine. She then takes Marine's hand and pleads with her to let her accompany her to the ball. Marine is unsure of what to do in this situation. After all, she doesn't want to deny her friend's request, but is also worried about her. But since she insists that she is feeling well, Marine agrees to let her accompany her to the ball. Alex, who observes everything thoughtfully, comments that in that case, he has no other option. He gallantly kisses Arya's hand and formally asks her to be his dance partner, and that only under this condition will he allow her to return to the ball. And our dear protagonist wonders how things got to this point. The story takes us back 6 months to the royal castle. Alexandrite is in his room with a frightened expression and dark marks all over his torso. A doctor is nearby and explains that if the bruises on his body reached his heart, it would likely take his life. Alex then asks how much time he would have left if he did nothing, and things continued as they were. The doctor replies that with luck, he would probably have about a year left to live. Alex lowered his head, resting his face in his hands, upset to know that the time he had left was less than he had imagined. The doctor tries to reassure him, saying that they will do everything possible to extend his life. Hearing this, Alex runs his hand through his hair and asks if there was any chance of a full recovery. The doctor hesitated, unable to give an answer. With a weak smile, Alex tells the doctor that he understands the situation and trusts that they will do the best they can. Alex tells us that the first bruise appeared on his leg, so he thought he had hurt himself during training and didn't pay much attention. But the bruises began to spread across his body, and the pain that came with them grew stronger and stronger, until one day he started coughing up blood, and shortly after, he fainted. After being examined, the doctors concluded that someone had placed a curse on Alex, and that the curse manifested through these bruises that began to destroy his body little by little. The news that he had only a year to live became a secret kept only by the king, the high priest, the doctor, and his secretary. The king feared that if this information leaked, it could cause unrest in the kingdom. And because of this, it was natural for the king to start preparing Onyx as his successor. Even Alex believed that this was the right decision. Therefore, Onyx began to be trained without knowing the real reason for it. This outraged the young man who believed that Alex was the best candidate to become king. He requested several audiences with the king and spent a good amount of time explaining why Alex was the most suitable among the 3 princes to become king. He declared with conviction that Alexandrite possessed a noble character, great compassion, intelligence, and humility, being the example of a perfect monarch. He even stated that he wished to become the ideal knight, worthy of serving a king like him. Alex admitted that although some of Onyx's words were a bit embarrassing to hear, they made him happy. But the truth was that with each passing moment, he was getting closer to death. And without a miracle, becoming king was something impossible. The worried king considered telling the truth to Onyx, but Alex asked that the secret be kept. For if rumors about a curse in the royal family spread, it would cause fear among the citizens and give other kingdoms the chance to take advantage of the situation. Moreover, Alex also did not have the courage to tell his beloved brothers that he would soon leave this world. Even so, the king was worried about Onyx's stubbornness. It was then that Alex suggested using the duke's daughter, Marine. He told the king that Onyx had been in love with Marine since they were children. The fact that she possessed sacred power made her an excellent candidate for queen. If the king declared that the man chosen by her would be the next monarch, perhaps Onyx would start to take the matter more seriously. The king acknowledged that the idea could be good, but emphasized that it was also necessary to consider the duke's intentions. Furthermore, Marine was at that moment training in the church to become a saint. Alex then questioned whether there could be a better use for her power than becoming queen. The king agreed, stating that it would be necessary to coordinate with various parties. Even so, he assured that he would move the plan forward. Alex, satisfied with the response, thanked his father and began to withdraw. But then his father called him by name. With a look filled with sincerity and a hint of sadness, he stated that he felt the same as Onyx regarding Alex and that there was no one more suitable to become king than him. With a slight smile and a calm gaze, he affirmed that he understood become king than him. With a slight smile and a calm gaze, he affirmed that he understood everything. Wow, I am impressed with our dear Alex, so perceptive and intelligent. So it was all part of his plan. I have faith that our protagonist will manage to save him. Shortly after, a letter arrived from the high priest, who had been secretly investigating the case. In it, he mentioned that a saint from the past had recorded the breaking of the same curse. The method described involved drinking the nectar of a mythical flower called ribloom. However, the record was from hundreds of years ago, and there was no guarantee that it was true. Even if it was just a small chance, Alex knew he had no other option but to cling to it. He immediately asked the high priest to search for the flower. In the meantime, as a temporary measure, he received church healings every few days to slow the curse's progression. Although the healings were making the curse evolve more slowly, the pain worsened each day, and if it weren't for the relief spells, he wouldn't even be able to stand. And on nights when the pain became uncontrollable, Alex often wondered why he had been born. He questioned why he had been the only one cursed and if he had been born only to endure that pain and die alone. And then, 6 months passed, and the search for the flower showed no progress. And without the flower, his path to survival was slowly disappearing. At least once before he died, he wanted to feel the joy of having been born. It was then that he met her. At first, he thought she was just an interesting woman. He had never seen a lady make such a funny expression upon seeing him. And as much as Harry found the young woman's attitude extremely disrespectful, something about her made Alex laugh out loud. It had been so long since he had laughed like that. And so he was determined to observe this interesting lady a little longer. And despite not understanding why she was acting that way, he couldn't help but find it all amusing. And as he watched her, it was as if he forgot all the pain he felt. He simply laughed. And with that, Alex wanted to know more and more about this fascinating young noblewoman. So, as soon as he discovered which family she belonged to, he asked Harry to send an invitation to the ball. Being from a prestigious family, she was easily qualified to attend the ball. On the night of the ball, Alex anxiously watched the carriages arriving, until she finally arrived at the ball. He smiled, believing that if he stayed by her side, he would be able to laugh until the end. And he was right. For that night, she showed him another funny expression. What other expressions did she still have to show him? He became more and more curious, more and more enchanted. Just watching her made him want to laugh. And as he laughed, the pain simply disappeared. He believed that perhaps this was what people called a miracle. Back in the present, as he and Citrine waited for Arya to change, Alexandrite then asked the gods, ensuring that he would not ask for anything more than that. So, at least until the end of his life, he simply wished from the bottom of his heart that they would let him stay by her side. He was sure that if this were possible, he would leave this world without regrets. The heart of this humble narrator aches a little upon hearing Alex's side of the story. And sadly, but at the same time, he is very cute and in love. Only Arya can't relax, thinking that while they are dancing, it means she will have to stay very close to Alex and still hold his hand, so the chances of her perishing from blood loss are almost certain. And it seems that while she was busy distracted with Alex, Onyx ended up bringing her closer to Marine and calling her to dance, which irritates the protagonist quite a bit. But she tries to calm down, remembering that there is still an opportunity to recreate the famous scene from the event she loves so much. She self-declares as the Cupid of love, ensuring the success of her favorite couple. With a plan in mind, she finally softens her expression, smiling at Alex, focused on reinforcing the bond between Marine and Alex and ensuring her favorite's happiness. The two then head to the center of the ballroom to start the dance. Woman, let go of this ship. Look closely at Alex. He is head over heels in love with you. Stop being silly and accept this man. Just Alex's smile makes her heart race, and she tries to concentrate so as not to lose her focus on the mission. From the corner of the ballroom, Citrine watches the two, slightly irritated that Arya did not thank him for choosing a dress that flattered her immensely. In the original game, there was an event during the ball where it was possible to choose where the heroine would go. This choice determined the partner for the final dance, making it an extremely important decision, as the relationship with that partner would increase significantly. She, of course, had already researched the strategy guide and knew that near the window was the correct choice. But she thought it was just a simple event, where Alexandrite invited Marin to chat briefly on the balcony. However, to her surprise, Alexandrite was being completely chivalrous and kissed Marin's hand, a bold event right from the start. Although it wasn't the legendary event she expected, he was trying to trigger the event that happened because Marin hurt her heel and Alexandrite noticed her, picking her up in his arms. This means that if Marine meets him near the window and has blisters on her feet, the event will likely be triggered. So she needs to make these events happen, but no matter how much that was the plan, things were not evolving favorably. Because before she could do anything, Marine had already been taken by Onyx to the center of the ballroom. She needed to find a way to interfere, make Marine hurt herself, and lead them to the balcony. Maybe when the music stops, she would have an opportunity to pull Onyx away and separate the two. But the blisters were a problem. How would she make Marine get blisters? Making her walk a lot was an option, but it seemed too cruel of her to do that to the lovely Marine. Alex, noticing his partner's distraction, asks where she is looking. And was dancing with him so boring that it made her look away? Arya, blushing, replies that it was nothing like that. He then asks if he can assume that she is enjoying dancing with him, since he was worried about being the only one having fun. Arya goes into fan mode and can't help but wish she had a camera in hand to capture the incredibly beautiful expression of her favorite. This thought makes her turn redder than a tomato, and she should look away in embarrassment. Arianel is completely mesmerized by the way Alexandrite moves, realizing that he dances with impeccable elegance. To her, he seems like a true masterpiece sculpted by the gods. And for a moment, she is happy to learn more about her favorite. But she can't help but break out in a cold sweat thinking that she is so close to Alex. She believes, for some reason, that she needs to bring Marine and Alex closer together. After all, she thinks that Alex is bothered by her proximity. Meanwhile, still in the corner of the ballroom, Citrine is sitting, clearly irritated, while sipping a glass of wine and watching his brothers dance. Surrounded by women vying for his attention and inviting him to dance with them. But Citrine seems a bit obsessed with our protagonist, especially because she rejected him, and also because he feels that Arya is different from the other women. She looked at him as if she didn't care about him at all. And with his ego bruised, he is determined not to let any woman resist his charm. He finally stands up, determined to seduce Arya and make her his. But a voice calls out to him just as he starts walking towards Arya. A woman with blonde hair and blue eyes, just like Citrine's. He bows to the woman, wishing her a good afternoon and referring to her as mother. The queen then questions why he is not with the duke's daughter. Citrine asks what she is talking about, and she reminds him of the real reason the ball is happening. But he smiles at his mother, saying he has no idea what she is talking about. She puts her hand to her head in frustration and tells him that as soon as this music ends, he should go to Marine and invite her to dance, because doing so will significantly increase his chances of becoming king. Citrine gives a small sarcastic smile. He apologizes to his mother, but tells her that the woman he will dance with is someone he will decide for himself. Saying this, he steps away from the queen and walks towards the center of the ballroom, telling himself that his target is our protagonist. And she, meanwhile, is already preparing to put her plan to separate Onyx from the heroine into action. As soon as the music ends, she starts walking towards Onyx, but her movements are impeded when both Alex and Citrine hold her by the hand. Alex, noticing his brother's advance, questions what he is doing and reminds him that Arya is his dance partner. Citrine retorts that people are allowed to switch partners when the music changes. And with that, he asks Arya if she would do him the honor of dancing with him. The two refuse to let go of Arya and stare at each other, increasing the tension of the moment. Arianel is lost and surprised, trying to understand why two of the main characters in the game are fighting over her and completely ignoring Marine, the heroine of the game. She wonders if this might be some kind of bug in the game, because in her mind, this makes no sense at all, especially since things between Marine and Onyx seem to be evolving rapidly. Realizing that her plan is about to fail, she begins to recalculate things, and after thinking for a bit, adjusts her action plan, believing she has found the best solution to this problem. In a serious tone, she asks the two to please let her go. They, not quite understanding, do so, and she, asking for permission, begins to distance herself from them. She then lets out a scandalous laugh, once again assuming her role as the villain. I wonder when she will realize that this villain act is completely ineffective and just makes her seem strange. Arya continues her speech, telling the two princes that unfortunately her next dance partner has already been chosen. She walks over to Marine and Onyx, literally placing herself between the two. Then she looks at Onyx, saying that he will be her next dance partner, surprising both Marine and Onyx. She then turns to the young heroine, saying that in the meantime she can dance the next song with the elegant Alex. As the music starts, she grabs Onyx's hand, saying that she won't let him escape, and begins to dance, and the atmosphere between the two is quite different from before. Onyx questions who she is, and with a fake smile she replies that she is just a noble lady and that he shouldn't worry about her. But the prince's expression changes, and in a threatening tone he says that he is not referring to that, and wants to know what she did to his brother. She looks at him, clearly not understanding what he is talking about. Onyx explains that his brother Alex is a noble and upright man, and has never been the type of fool to be swayed by a single woman. But when he is close to her, he shows a side of himself that Onyx has never seen. With a mix of hatred and concern in his gaze, he questions whether she might be a witch who dared to use dark magic on his brother's heart. Startled by such a suggestion, she asserts that she would never do something like that and that he is quite mistaken. She explains to us that in this world, dark magic is a curse that borrows power from evil gods. Saints like Marin borrow power from the gods to perform miracles. That is why witches and saints are exactly the opposite of each other. And both in the anime and in the game, there was a scene where her two favorite characters stopped a witch who was trying to use dark magic, saving an entire city. The way they acted together at that moment was perfect. Just remembering it makes her salivate with excitement. Onyx leans toward her in a somewhat threatening manner and warns her that although Alex seems calm now, he believes there is a more suitable woman for him. And if she is thinking of controlling his heart using dark magic, he, Onyx, will stop her. With a confident tone in her voice, she says that it is a coincidence because she thinks the same thing. Onyx is confused upon hearing this, but Arya asks him to look in the direction she is pointing. where Marine and Alexandrite are standing next to each other. She then says that Lady Marine is the most suitable woman for Prince Alexandrite. Arya turns to him and questions if he doesn't also agree with her. And he, with a tender yet slightly sad look, agrees that his brother deserves someone like Marine, making our protagonist feel extremely guilty, realizing that Onyx clearly only wants the best for his brother, even if it means giving up on the one he loves. But she doesn't let the guilt make her back down, as she is willing to do anything to prevent her favorite character from perishing. Arianel then tells Onyx that if he understands this, he should step aside. His speech is interrupted by a request for silence from the king. Arya knows that this means the main event of the ball is about to begin. The king asks for everyone's attention as he is going to make an announcement. He then calls out Marine's name, leaving the young woman surprised and worried at the same time. He continues by saying that the kingdom has 3 princes, and he believes that all of them possess the qualities necessary to become king. Therefore, he makes a request to her, daughter of a noble duke of the kingdom and also holder of the power of the saint. He orders her to choose the most suitable prince to become king and marry him so that they can govern the kingdom together. Marine is unable to say anything after hearing the king's unusual request. Arya notes that Marine's reaction is the same in both the anime and the game, which is quite plausible considering the responsibility of the choice. And despite the positions of the 3 princes being slightly different, it still falls within an acceptable margin of error. In both the anime and the game, the screen would darken at this point, and the next day would begin. Naturally, the story would continue with Marine approaching the 3 princes. And what happens during the black screen was a mystery, leaving our protagonist anxious about what would happen next. But the answer to Arya's question comes quickly when Alex raises his hand, stating that he refuses the position of king. This leaves our young protagonist speechless. The king, poorly disguising his surprise, confirms whether Alexandrite really wants to refuse to be a candidate, prompting the prince to confirm again. Everyone is astonished by such a stance, as they expected Alex to become the next king. Citrine also speaks up, refusing the proposal, using the excuse that being king seems like a lot of work. The king is surprised by the stance of his youngest son, while the queen beside him appears clearly irritated upon hearing her only son's words. Arya casts a judging look at the king for so casually accepting the refusals of potentially good candidates to become king. Alex approaches Onyx, saying that in this case it is clear that he will become the next king, and he will be leaving along with the lovely Lady Arianel. He wishes everyone a good end of the night and exits the ballroom, taking Arya with him. Alex takes her to the royal palace gardens. She panics, thinking that this way, she won't be able to increase Marine's affection for him, and she needs to get him back to the event as soon as possible. Worried, she asks Alex what they are doing there. Arya observes that Alex has a slightly more serious expression, and although he is trying to act calm, she believes he is not feeling well. She then squeezes his hand, making him stop, and asks if he is feeling unwell. Upon hearing Arya's question, Alex gives a cute smile, blushing slightly. He then says that she is truly an amazing person, but Arya seems not to understand the prince's comment. Alex then leans towards her, resting his head on her shoulder and asking her to lend him her shoulder for just a minute. She helps him lean on her, practically hugging him, and confusedly asks what is happening and what is wrong. Alex cannot say anything, as he concentrates on trying to hold back the agonizing pain. Arya realizes that Alex is probably suffering from the symptoms of his illness and tells him that she will call Marine, as with her divine powers, his pain should improve quickly. But as she starts to pull away, Alex holds her wrist. He asks her not to go, admitting that he doesn't want to be away from her, leaving Arya redder than a tomato and extremely surprised by such a confession. The scene cuts to the two sitting on a bench in the garden. Arya observes Alex, clearly worried but relieved that he has calmed down. She wants to free him from this painful illness as soon as possible. Therefore, Marine needs to follow the route with Alex at all costs. This is because, in this route, the couple embarks on a journey to obtain the Ribloom and cure Alex. This is the main event of the romantic route. Now it finally makes sense why she was obsessed with them being together. This narrator apologizes for having judged without knowing, despite still finding it easier for her to simply get the plan herself. The protagonist remembers that during the trip, there is the event under the same roof at the inn and other romantic moments that make the heart race in the best style of an automata game. For Arya, the route with Alex is the best route, as in it, the couple realizes they are in love with each other and overcomes Alex's terminal illness, thus creating a beautiful romance. Arya's daydreaming is interrupted by Alex, who apologizes for having leaned on her out of nowhere and that it must have been frightening. But she gives an awkward smile, saying that it's all right, remembering that the hardest part was calming her heart with her favorite so close to her. Changing the subject, she asks if he is feeling any better. Alex says he only feels a little tired, but that he is much better. She repeats what he just said, but thoughtfully, knowing that Alex probably only said that because he is actually hiding his illness from everyone. so he didn't have much choice but to say he was fine. The prince holds Arya's hand and thanks her for staying by his side, as thanks to that, he feels much better. Arianel is delighted to hear this, but then she realizes something. That is exactly the same situation that happened in the game when Marine relieved Alex's pain for the first time with her sacred powers. She despairs, asking herself why she is there in place of Marine. The scene is so perfect and romantic that it should be happening between the protagonists, not with her. With that, she stands up, commenting that they should return to the ball, because she knows she needs to prevent Onyx and Marine from getting closer. To her surprise, Alex asks if they really need to go back. He looks at her with a gentle gaze and asks, "What would you say?" He then places her hand on his face and says that even if she said no, he has no intention of letting her go. This makes our protagonist's poor heart almost leap out of her mouth, so she ends up giving in. The two walk through the gardens while Arya, tense, can't help but worry about the fact that she needs to increase the affinity between Marine and Alex. Moreover, she can't help but feel tense, as she is so close to her favorite. And just the thought of how close she is to him has already made her heart race wildly. Casually, Alex asks if she would mind listening a bit to what he has to say. And she politely says she would love to listen. He says he has spent his whole life dedicating himself to becoming king, and although he can't tell her why, he no longer has the qualifications to be king. She looks at him curiously, wondering if the reason he is unqualified is the illness. Arya knows that even while suffering, he always keeps a smile on his face, and he does this because he doesn't want to worry the people around him. She remembers having shed many tears over this while playing the game or watching the anime. Alexandrate has always been a prince and a kind man. He always put others first, never thinking of himself. He dedicated everything he had to help someone other than himself. And seeing him trying so hard gave her the strength to keep working even in the toughest moments. The love that Alexandrate had for his people always shone through. That is why she admired him so much and wanted to support him with all her heart. After all, if he is trying so hard, she had to at least try and put in effort too. No matter how difficult the work was, she always managed to pick herself up because she knew he was also giving his best. After remembering this, she decides to casually ask him something. She then says that if marrying Lady Marine could make him king, the fact that he doesn't have the qualifications would be irrelevant. Firmly and decisively, Alex retorts that this has nothing to do with him, and that he had decided to support his brother Onyx as the next king. Onyx may seem cold and distant, which makes him easily misinterpreted, but in reality, he is a serious and reliable man, never backing down when he makes a decision, and besides that, continuing Alex while gently touching the young woman's face. A miracle only needs to happen once in a lifetime. He concludes mysteriously. Arya repeats the word miracle as a question, not understanding what he is talking about. Alex then leans towards her and looking into her eyes says that the miracle is her entering his life. "Me?" says Arianel, still trying to understand what is happening. "My God, is your heart racing with Alex being so sweet?" "Because mine is." He confesses that strangely, when he talks to her like that, he feels he no longer needs to follow the path to become king, and that he can be happy in another way. Perhaps this is the miracle that was given to him in this life. She asks what he means by that, while mentally starting to panic. Assuming that if she stays by his side, he will simply accept his fate and succumb to the illness, Alex continues speaking, unable to hear the thoughts of our protagonist. He says that his goal was to be king, but it seems that all of this has been in vain. But that by her side, perhaps. Arya holds Alex's hand, telling him not to worry and that it is still too early to give up. And she promises him that she won't let his effort go to waste. And she more than anyone knows that he is the most suitable person to become king, because she has been watching him all this time. Although she has no divine power, she has the knowledge she gained by being a die-hard fan of Alex and playing the game multiple times. Determined, she asks him to leave things to her, mentally promising that she will get the Ribloom and Marine's affection for Alex. Arya, looking Alex in the eyes, promises to make him king with her own hands. After all she wants is to give her favorite, beloved a happy ending filled with true love. Alex is a bit confused by Arianel's words. He believes that Arya didn't quite understand what he meant, while she brings her hand to her chin, saying that she needs to start planning everything immediately. She knows that from now on, Marine will live in the castle, and there, she will study to become queen while interacting with the princes. Thinking about this, she begins to think of a way to bring the two closer together. But then, Nadia approaches like a ghost behind her, surprising Arya, who questions what Nadia is doing there and why she is apologizing. And then she notices that Nadia is not alone. Right behind Nadia are Marine, Citrine, and Onyx. Marine says she is relieved to see that Arya is okay. The young girl with pink hair looks at the heroine, questioning what is happening. She then explains that a few minutes ago she was in the hall talking to Onyx when Citrine approached, asking about that woman. Marine questioned him if that woman means Lady Arianel, and Citrine confirms that it is. She then noticed that it had been a while since she last saw Arya. Onyx comments that he saw Alex go to the outdoor area with her. Hearing this, Citrine concludes that Arya is the woman to whom Alex sent the invitation for the ball. The three talked a bit, questioning Alex's intentions. But they are interrupted by Nadia, worried about not being able to find her lady. And this way, Marine finishes explaining to Arya how they all ended up looking for her. Arya apologizes to her maid for making her worried. Nadia hugs her emotionally, saying that the most important thing is that she is safe. Again, Nadia lifts her lady onto her shoulders and starts carrying her back to the mansion. Arya struggles, asking Nadia to wait. She then escapes from her maid's arms and goes to Marine. Saying that she has a favor to ask, she holds the heroine's hand. Then she says she would be immensely grateful if Marine would allow her to serve as her lady-in-waiting. And everyone present is surprised by the request. A few days later at the royal palace, Arianel formally introduces herself to Lady Marina, informing her that starting today she will serve her as her lady-in-waiting. Marine thanks her, a bit embarrassed by so much formality. Meanwhile, Arya laughs inside, feeling victorious for successfully infiltrating the palace. Although it was a bit complicated to leave home, since Nadia refused to let her go. This made her resort to a low blow against the poor maid, saying that if Nadia didn't let her go to the palace, she would never speak to her again. And although she felt bad for Nadia, she knew she was doing it for a good reason, to save her favorite. Returning to the present, Marine confesses that she is feeling a bit lost in the palace. She was told to live like a queen candidate, but she had no idea what exactly that meant, or what she was supposed to do. It's no wonder Marin is confused. She has spent her whole life helping people like a saint and training to use her sacred powers. Arya approaches the young woman and says that she will be there to help her, and that if she has any problems, she just needs to say so. But secretly, Arya will do whatever she can to guide Marin on the path to save her favorite. Upon hearing this, Marin smiles and says that Lady Arianel's presence gives her a lot of strength. The two are interrupted by a woman with a firm posture who appears to be a tutor. She informs Marin that starting that day, she will begin to learn everything necessary to become queen. Arianel responds to the woman enthusiastically, but the tutor gives her a stern look and asks why the lady-in-waiting is answering in place of her mistress. Trying to justify herself, Arya says that she and Marin are like two halves of a whole. The governess sighs and says that in that case, Arya should sit down since she will participate in the lessons alongside Marin. But quickly, Arya refuses. Marin, seeing her colleague's refusal, questions whether she won't stay with her. The protagonist apologizes, explaining that, unfortunately, she has some tasks to fulfill and therefore cannot participate in the lesson at that moment. Then she leaves, leaving both Marin and her tutor confused. According to the anime, between lessons, the player could talk to her favorite prince, triggering various events and increasing the affection level with him. Thanks to this, there were many breathtaking events. Determined, she decides that she will recreate all that excitement with her own hands. That's why, no matter the cost, she needed to act to avoid the various flags that triggered certain events. She goes to the palace training area, where the soldiers along with Prince Onyx are training. Arya is impressed by how the scene is exactly like in the anime. In the anime, on the day Marin arrives at the castle, Onyx is training and ends up seriously injuring himself. Then she is called to heal his injury, and they end up getting even closer. In the game, this is the event in Onyx's route that gives the most intimacy points. In other words, this cannot happen. That's why she was there. The protagonist believed that if she kept a watchful eye on Onyx, she could more easily prevent it. In the distance, Alex seems to notice Arya. On the other side of the room, Citrine, who has just arrived, also sees Arya watching the training. Both princes look determined not to let Arianel and Onyx get close. Arya, for her part, continues watching the training, certain that with Onyx's skill, it doesn't seem like he will get hurt. Only a young boy training there is the key factor that triggers the start of the event. The young boy, during his training, for some reason, lets his sword slip, causing it to head towards another knight. And when it seems that the blade will hit another knight, Onyx throws himself to save him. But the blade ends up piercing Onyx's arm. Honestly, there were many flaws in this plot, but if she thought of it as a scenario created by the gods to spice up the romance between Marine and Onyx, everything made sense. After all, a wounded hero being healed by the heroine was the kind of cute and classic scene that was perfect. But none of this was going to happen because Arya planned to take the boy away from the training area. With the plan structured, she approaches the boy, and using her charm, she asks if he could help her for a moment. Promptly, the boy offers to help her. Internally, the protagonist celebrates that her plan is working. Once again, she realizes that she learned something by observing the students. If a beautiful woman makes a request kindly, the young men follow her without hesitation. As a former teacher, she feels a bit guilty for deceiving such a young boy, but since it's to save lives, she has no choice. She quickly starts to leave with the boy from the training zone, when Citrine appears, asking where she is going, making the protagonist wonder why the third prince was there. He leans towards Arya, saying that if she needs help, he can assist her. He starts to order the boy to return to training, Citrine casts a threatening look in the boy's direction, and quickly the boy retreats. Arya tries to stop him from leaving, but Citrine grabs her by the arm again, questioning what it is that she needs. What or who is causing her problems? Little does he know that the one bothering her is actually him. Arya just asks him to let her go while Citrine insists that she tell him why she asked the boy for help. She looks towards the training field to try to see where the boy is, but she is startled to see that the scene has begun, and a sword slips from one of the soldiers' hands and is thrown into the air. The other knights had already noticed the situation, so it was to be expected that Onyx would also notice. But when she looks at him, she realizes that he is distracted, looking at something. Onyx was gazing dreamily at Marin, who was on the second-floor balcony near the training field. She wonders, confused, if this is one of those ridiculous scenarios where the hero is so enchanted by the heroine that he can't move in time. Determined, she starts to run quickly towards Onyx. She shouts for him to be careful and look up as she approaches. Using the momentum of her run, she pushes Onyx, pulling him out of the sword's path. The knights warn her to be careful because now that she pushed Onyx, the sword is heading directly towards her. But something hits the sword, causing it to veer off its trajectory. We then see that Alex, who is also there observing, reacts immediately and runs to help Arya. With a precise strike, he intercepts the sword with his own, preventing it from hitting the young woman. At the same time, Citrine had thrown himself in front, grabbing Arya and trying to protect her with his own body. As the adrenaline of the moment subsides, Arya wonders why her favorite is also in that place. Alex looks seriously at Onyx, asking why he was so distracted standing in the middle of the field. And in a serious tone, he asks his brother to be more careful. Intimidated by Alex's glare, Onyx apologizes to his brother. After that, he walks over to Arya. He extends his hand towards her, and she, still in shock, asks what exactly happened. Alex, pulling her closer to him, says he would like to know why she did something so reckless. "Because I don't want you to die." The protagonist responds mentally, knowing she can't tell him the real reason. Citrine hugs her from behind, asking Alex not to make such a scary expression. Alex explains that the least he can do is scold her for putting her life at risk by doing that. Citrine comments that in situations like that, the best thing to do is protect the person in danger, just like he is doing now. Irritated, the first prince comments in a cutting tone that his dear brother is probably overestimating his own strength. At that moment, a sweet voice calls for Arianel. Marin, who probably saw everything from the balcony, approaches quickly. Arya asks if something happened because she is coming running. While mentally getting excited to see Marin and Alex in the same environment, thinking to herself that this could be an opportunity to increase the affection between them. It is then that Marin asks Arianel if she has feelings for Onyx. Look at that. The heroine is jealous. How cute. But I think it's plausible. After all, she doesn't know the real reason. And to an outsider, it may really seem like Arya likes Onyx. Initially, Arya believes she must have misheard what the young woman just asked her. Embarrassed, Marin looks at the protagonist and asks with a hesitant voice if she really likes Onyx so much that she would risk her own life to protect him. Arya feels frustrated upon hearing the question, not understanding how things got to that point. For the protagonist, there are two types of people in the world: those who receive support in love and those who offer support in love. And she learned about this back in high school. One day, one of her classmates approached her and asked if she was close to a boy in the class named Watanabe. Asuka replied that somewhat. They live near each other, and their families got along well. The girl then confesses that she actually asked that because she is interested in Watanabe, and she wanted to ask Asuka for help to get closer to him. In fact, at that time our protagonist also had a crush on Watanabe, but because of things that had happened in the past, she believed she did not deserve to be loved. The fear of opening up and confessing her feelings prevented her from approaching someone romantically. While she remained silent, deep in thought, the girl's classmates began to pressure her to help her friend. They insisted, saying that if Asuka and Watanabe were close, she should do it out of friendship, even though in reality those girls had never paid any attention to Asuka before. And since Asuka just wanted to live her high school years peacefully, she quickly tried to suppress her feelings for him. Lacking the courage to oppose anyone, she ended up giving in to the girl's request. All she did for the girl was call him to talk, giving the girl the chance to confess her feelings to him. Thanks to that, the girl was able to start dating him. But on the other hand, this ended up bringing her closer to the girls, becoming friends with them. It was then that instead of seeking love for herself, Asuka began to find satisfaction in helping others with their relationships. From that point on, even when she fell in love with the same person as one of her friends, she always chose to prioritize others. She placed her friend's feelings above her own, convincing herself that helping others to be happy was enough for her. She began to feel genuinely happy seeing that both her friend and the person she liked were happy. She fully accepted the role of supporting others in their loves. For someone like her, it seemed destined to have discovered Otomi Games, where she could support the heroine's love and cheer for her happiness. No matter how difficult the romance was, she always did everything to ensure that the couple she helped had a happy ending. We return to the present, where all three princes seem to be in shock at Marine's straightforward question. Arya remains still, realizing with a mix of astonishment and frustration that her actions were clearly misinterpreted by the heroine. Trying to ease the situation, she invites the young girl to have some tea privately. The two go to the garden and Arya begins to explain things. But Marin interrupts her, saying that what she did for Onyx was something truly noble and beautiful, and that she would never have the courage to do the same, concluding that Arya would be a much better partner for the prince than she would. But even so, she could not deny her own feelings. Saying this, Marine stands up abruptly, calling Arianel by name, confessing that she is also in love with Prince Onyx. Our protagonist takes a few minutes to process what she just heard. Panicking internally, she had already suspected that the conversation might turn into a love consultation, but she did not expect things to take that turn, especially with such a confession. Arya begins to spiral into despair, trying to understand where she had failed in her mission to keep Marin away from Onyx. In any case, she realizes that the situation is about to spiral completely out of control. If things continue this way, her favorite character would be doomed. Noticing her friend's sudden silence, Marine watches her with curiosity, and then, unable to contain her doubt, she asks again if Arianel also liked Onyx. Still in shock from all the information, Arya questions why Marine is asking her that. The young girl states that Arianel is a very important friend to her, and it was precisely for that reason that Marin decided to be completely honest about her own feelings for Onyx. She wanted everything between them to be clear so that they could have a fair competition for Onyx's love. Arya internally panics, wondering if the route between Onyx and Marine was confirmed at some point without her noticing, and if there is any way to reverse it. Tears run down the protagonist's face as she thinks that she has failed and that her favorite may be doomed. Marine, not understanding anything, wipes her friend's tears away, apologizing for making her cry. But Arya refuses to give up. If she threw in the towel now, it would mean that her favorite's light would go out, and she could not accept that Alex would have such a fate. She quickly devises a plan in her mind and decides to use the misunderstanding to her advantage. No. Yes. This narrator is screaming internally in pure despair. It makes no sense for her to insist on this. It was just to pick the damn flower. Please stop trying to pair the heroine with Alex. Giving a forced smile, Arya confirms that she is completely in love with Prince Onyx. And because of this, she asks Marine to please give up her love for Onyx. Marine's expression upon hearing that makes the protagonist feel guilty. Unable to continue lying after seeing her friend's sad look, she runs away. Marine is confused to see Arianel walking away and calls her with a tone of doubt. Arya quickly turns to the heroine and says that if she is thinking about getting married, she strongly recommends that Marine choose Prince Alexandri. With that, she runs away, distancing herself, while Marine asks where she is going. Arya simply replies that she will return for dinner and asks, please, not to be fired. Citrine, who is nearby, observes the entire conversation, and then she approaches Marine, saying that she heard rumors that she is in love with the second prince and questions whether they are true. Marine feels quite embarrassed by the direct question and stammers while trying to respond. But to her surprise, Citrine offers to help her win Onyx. A little distance away, Arya tries to catch her breath after the desperate run. She begins to mentally organize everything that just happened and to outline her new plan of action. For some reason, the level of affection between Marine and Onyx seems to be almost at its maximum. And Arya knows that if she doesn't do anything now, the route with Onyx will become the main one. Maybe there is a way to reverse things. First, she will create an event that drastically lowers Marine's affection for Onyx and, at the same time, initiate another that brings her closer to Alex. She walks thoughtfully and concludes that, for now, she just needs to increase the interactions between Marine and her favorite. Until, accidentally, she runs into Alexandrite. What a beautiful scene. I want them to be together soon. Although she considers it a tremendous stroke of luck to find her favorite while thinking about him, Arya can't help but be surprised to see him. After all, encounters like this are extremely dangerous for her heart. Trying to calm herself, she asks what he is doing there. He gives a discreet smile upon seeing her. Then he explains that he was thinking of going to meet her. But the fact that they ran into each other by chance is really a lot of luck. Approaching her, he asks what she meant earlier. Not understanding, Arya questions what exactly he is referring to. When you said you liked Onyx, what did you really mean by that? Can you explain it to me, my lady? Alex asks, his voice laden with a slight concern and anxiety. Arya feels embarrassed that Alex heard her little lie. These men are all gossips. Everyone went there to eavesdrop on their conversation. We go back a bit in time, to just before Alex meets Arya. He looks thoughtfully at the stars. Remembering the past, he tells us that, for him, both Onyx and Citrine are his beloved and precious younger brothers. Especially Onyx. He was very attached to Alex and followed him everywhere. He was so cute that Alex felt he could do anything for him. And that feeling he had for his beloved brother was extremely genuine. but seeing Arianel direct her affection towards him, to the point of risking her own life to protect him, made Alex think for the first time. Why him? Why Onyx? We return to the present moment. Alex is looking at Arya seriously, waiting for her response. She starts to sweat cold while trying to think of a way to explain what she said earlier, but without understanding why Alex seems so angry. Believing that he must be upset for having heard Marine say she was in love with Onyx. Then, for some reason that only our protagonist understands, she assumes that Alex must be blaming her for failing to help him be with Marine. And just like this narrator, Alex also doesn't understand why suddenly Arya starts to apologize while crying. Still crying, she holds Alex's hand and apologizes for being so inefficient and for having made him go through an uncomfortable situation. But she says he can rest assured because she will do everything possible for him and Marine to be together and for him to become king. After saying this, she runs away crying, and Alex tries to stop her but in vain. And he stays there, watching her leave, not understanding what the hell just happened. Seriously, there are times when the protagonist is so intelligent and clever, but at other moments, for God's sake, it seems like she doesn't think. Oh no, she ran away, big brother Alex, says Citrine, who appeared out of nowhere. This man is everywhere. He comments to his brother that, at that moment, he could probably claim the throne for himself, then questions whether it would really be okay if Onyx and Marine ended up together and he became king. Alex affirms that is exactly what he wants, and then asks if things worked out for Citrine. And confident, Citrine says of course they did. He has already advised Marine on how to connect with Onyx following their plan. He also tells Onyx not to refuse Marine's invitations, but he believes this won't be a problem since it's clear they like each other, and with a little push, they'll end up together. Citrine looks at Alex and says he cooperated, but now it's Alex's turn to stay away from that girl. But Alex questions what he means by that. Citrine says, from his own experience, that Arya is much stronger than Alex imagines. So he concludes that it's better for Alex to back off now, because that way he will get hurt less. Alex says that maybe that's true, but even so, he can't help but try to reach her, to touch the light she emanates. Citrine is surprised at how much that woman has attracted and enchanted his brother. But unfortunately, she has also awakened his interest, and he is determined to make her his. Citrine concludes as he steps away. And Alex. As soon as his brother steps away, Alex vents to himself, saying that things are not quite as his brother thinks, and that he just wishes to have her by his side until the day he disappears from this world. The scene cuts to Arya, clearly uncomfortable with the fact that she is just a lady in waiting and sitting at the dinner table with her new mistress, especially after she practically declared a love war against Marine. She wonders if Marine likes her less now that they are rivals in love. And almost as if she were hearing the protagonist's thoughts, Marine turns to Arya and says she is very happy to be able to have dinner with her. Arya smiles relieved and says that eating in the company of Lady Marine makes the food taste even better. As expected from the heroine of the story, she can distinguish between love and friendship. Arianel mentally celebrates. Marine invites Arya to go to the city center on the next day off they have. Excited? She agrees. Since this is perfect, because it would be too difficult for her favorite character to win Marine over through the traditional castle route, she was determined to change the atmosphere. An event in the city would be perfect to change that. A perfect date with a romantic kiss at the end. Excited about the plan, the next step was to find Harry, her favorite character's secretary. Her plan was simple but bold, to ask him to convince her favorite to accompany them to the city, to the sadness of our protagonist. Upon arriving in the city, Marine had invited Onyx for the outing, and the two were being super cute and nice to each other. But she doesn't let it get to her and starts looking around. Citrine appears out of nowhere. Seriously, this man is omnipresent. He asks if she is looking for someone. Seeing that she was surprised, he rhetorically asks if she had asked Harry to convince Alex to accompany Marine. And he knows this because he met with Harry, and he mentioned that Alex was very busy and couldn't go. Upon hearing this, she became thoughtful. It had been days since she last saw her favorite. A pang of worry crossed her as she remembered his illness, but since it was still very early in the story for that, she understood that work could be a plausible reason for his disappearance. Citrine comments that she should count on him instead of her busy brother Alex, because for him, she would always be the priority even before work. Marine approaches, seeing that Citrine had just arrived. She thanks Citrine for the suggestion to invite Onyx for a walk in the city, and the protagonist, upon hearing this, is clearly irritated. Marine turns to Arya and says that they should compete to see who pleases Onyx more. What shocks Arya is seeing Marine dedicating herself so much for Onyx. However, the young heroine does not notice her friend's gaze and only heads towards Onyx, who is waiting for her in front of the carriage. Arianel looks very irritated at Citrine, who casually says that he only suggested that she and Arya take a walk in the city with Onyx to see who he would end up getting closer to and choosing. Why, asks Arya. Citrine approaches her with a confident smile and says that it is clearly because he wants her to give up on Onyx as soon as possible. Marine calls Arianel and asks her to hurry so they can go to the city soon. Citrine takes the opportunity and starts pulling Arya by the wrist towards the carriage. The protagonist goes into a panic, thinking about the possibility of a kiss between Onyx and Marine during the city outing. Then she comments that going for a walk in the city with so many people is boring. And assuming her villainous posture, she states that they should cancel the outing. Meanwhile, in the palace, we hear Harry's voice clearly worried. He asks His Majesty to hold on tight because he has already informed the church to send a priest as soon as possible. It seems the protagonist was right to suspect the progression of her favorite's illness. Poor Alex seems to be in a lot of pain. A little time passes, and a priest arrives at Alexandrite's chambers. Asking for permission, he opens Alex's robe and becomes concerned with what he sees. The bruises have come very close to his heart. The priest asks Harry, worried, how long his condition has been worsening like this. Harry replies that this morning His Majesty has worsened significantly, but he has been feeling unwell for the past few days, which is why he was kept away from kingdom matters to rest. The priest extends his hands over Alex's chest, and a faint golden light begins to shine from his hands. Alex's features improve a little after that, but the priest informs Harry that at this moment, the most he can do is alleviate Alex's pain, and unfortunately, nothing more than that. He suggests that they take Alex to the church as soon as possible, as there they might be able to better address the progression of the illness. Harry becomes irritated with the suggestion, saying that it is reckless to try to take Alex anywhere in the condition he is in. The priest argues that if Alex stays there, he will die in a short time, and that the church is their only option. With a weak voice, Alex asks the priest to take him to the church, saying that if there is a possibility of extending his life a little longer, even if it's small, he wants to try. Harry sighs, worried about his lord. Meanwhile, the priest silently wishes they had the miraculous flower Ribloom. The scene cuts to Onyx, clearly very irritated. He questions through clenched teeth what the hell Arya is doing. And she, holding onto his arm, says she wants to stay close to him because she likes him a lot. Internally, Arya also did not want to be doing this, but she ended up being convinced by Marine to come to the city. And because of that, she needs to act. But that doesn't mean she would just stand by and let their romance evolve. She would do everything to keep Onyx away from Marine. That's why she believes that if she stays glued to Onyx, Marine will have fewer opportunities to get close to him. Citrine approaches the group again and tells them to stop the nonsensical chatter and get into the store already. And so, a few minutes later, we see Arianel in a beautiful lilac dress with a very eye-catching hat, while Citrine seems to analyze her from head to toe. After a few seconds of looking, he orders the attendant to bring the other dress. And almost like magic, Arianel is now wearing a new dress of a very different style with floral details. Pleased with what he sees, Citrine tells the attendant that he will take that dress. Arya asks why he is doing this, and he says that the dress she was wearing was horrible, and that it would be an outrage to have someone dressed like that next to him. She comments that she does not intend to stay close to him anyway. And Citrine says he doesn't understand why she insists on getting close to Onyx when it is clear that he and Marine were made for each other. Irritated, the protagonist says that he is talking a bunch of nonsense and that the most suitable person for Marine is Prince Alexandrite. The fact that she talks about Alex out of nowhere intrigues Citrine. Then he finally realizes that her goal is to get Alexandrite and Marine together, which for him was quite convenient, as it would take Alexandrite out of the running for her love. With a beautiful smile, he claims he will help her with her goal. Unfortunately, the protagonist is a bit slow and doesn't understand the young prince's offer. Marine approaches wearing clothes in the same style as Arya. They have a small moment as happy friends for wearing the same style of clothing and matching each other. Citrine nudges Onyx, saying it's a shame that he and Marine aren't alone having fun on a stroll through the city. And Onyx just tells him to be quiet. Taking on a more serious tone, he questions whether Citrine isn't bothered by the king's recent proposal. He finds it very strange that out of nowhere, their father wants to choose the king in such an unusual way. And everyone always thought Alex would be the next king. Moreover, since Citrine is so perceptive, he thought his brother would also suspect something. Citrine casually comments that maybe the king just thinks Alex is no longer suitable. This makes Onyx glare at him with a deadly look. Onyx explains that he has appealed to the king several times, but the king didn't seem to want to change his mind. And Alex seemed to be agreeing with everything his father said, almost as if he were also involved in all this nonsense. That's why Onyx is sure there is some mystery behind all this, and he is determined to find out what it is, and ensure that both of them remove the absurd proposal of anyone other than Alex becoming king. Citrine, looking at Arya, comments that it is truly impressive. Onyx's commitment to the kingdom. For the young third prince, living is like enjoying a game of chess or poker. Even the fact that he is competing for Arya, he does it just because he can't stand the idea of a woman not falling in love with him. The little toy that captivated his attention, he intends to make it his before someone else takes it for themselves. And that is the only thing that matters to him at the moment. The four walk through the city, and out of nowhere, Arya starts to feel tense. We find out that it's because they are approaching the fountain, and there is a great chance of a kissing event between Marin and Onyx occurring. She tries to think of something quickly to get the two away from the location when some women pass by commenting on a play that is being presented nearby. And this gives the protagonist an idea. A play would take at least 2 hours to be presented, so if they sit down to watch, they won't have time to do anything else afterward. And having to return quickly to the palace for dinner as soon as the play ends would be perfect for our protagonist. Determined, Arya suggests to Marine that they watch the play together. Although Citrine shows no interest in the play, Marine seems excited to watch. And with the heroine's confirmation, Arya pulls her in the direction where the small presentation is taking place. Upon arriving at the location, they discover that the play is called The Saint versus The Witch, The Legend of Ribloom. Again, we see Onyx irritated. He asks Arya to step away, but she says she can't help it and just wants to be close to the man she likes. While trying to move away from Arya, Onyx ends up going to one side and accidentally touching Marine's hand, creating a cute moment between the two and making the protagonist freak out for having unintentionally increased the affinity between them even more. She pulls Onyx's arm, determined to destroy the romantic moment between him and the heroine. Citrine pulls Arya close to him, asking her to stop with such a senseless fight. Arya protests, asking him to let her go, but he refuses, demanding that she give him a little attention. The play begins, and the presenter initially thanks everyone for their presence. Then he asks for everyone's attention, because today's presentation will be about something that everyone in the kingdom is already familiar with: the story of the rivalry between the saint and the witch. As he says this, the man throws flowers into the audience, and Arya is impressed, thinking for a moment that what is in her hands are the famous Ribloom, the plant capable of saving her favorite's life. She enters a small ecstasy, happy that something so precise would be found in such an unusual place. But then, upon touching the flower more, she realizes that what she has in her hands are artificial flowers. And Marine curiously comments that this is how the Ribloom looked. Arya is surprised that Marine knows about the Ribloom, as she thought it was something introduced only later in the game. Marine comments that her mother taught her about the Ribloom, and besides that, she also read stories about the Ribloom for the children at the orphanage. Arya then asks if Marine has ever come into contact with a real Ribloom, but Marine comments that she didn't know the Ribloom was real. She believed it was just something invented to make children's stories more interesting. Realizing she has said too much, Arya tries to disguise it by commenting that, of course, Riblooms are not real. She understands that at this moment in the story, Marine knows the stories about the Ribloom, but does not know that the flower actually exists. Only later in the game, after the affection between her and Alex is high enough, does she discover about his illness. And after that, she goes with Alex to the High Priest to look for ways to save her beloved. And it is then that he explains to her more about the Ribloom. Then the protagonist feels a little more relieved, certain that with time and her own effort, things will eventually lead to this route. Onyx comments that a flower from a fairy tale could not really exist. The small discussion among the four is interrupted by the actors in the performance. A man in prince's clothing kneels before the saint, begging her to save him. He rolls up the sleeves of his shirt, exposing purple marks, and tells the saint that for some time those spots have been appearing on his body, causing him to suffer from very intense pain and making it hard for him to breathe properly. Arya can't help but notice that the play is extremely similar to what is happening with Alexandrite. But when the actor tells the saint that this is because of a curse sent by the witch, our protagonist is surprised. Especially since the actress playing the saint says that the only way to save him is by using the nectar of the Ribloom. Thinking, she wonders if her favorite's illness could also be caused by the witch's medication. And if this is true, what would that really mean? Even in her favorite's route, although there were episodes related to the witch, there was no clear connection to the Ribloom, allowing it to be found. So could the explanation for this be in one of the routes with the other two princes that she hasn't played because she has always been faithful to the route with her favorite? The play continues, and the protagonist is pulled from her thoughts by the witch's entrance in the scene. The saint asks the witch why she has put this upon her majesty, but before the witch can respond, she falls to the ground, overcome by pain. She then reveals that she cast the curse on the man because she desires his death, and in exchange for shortening her own life, she accelerated the progress of that man's disease. So in a short time, the curse will spread throughout his body and lead him to death. Clearly worried, Arya thinks about what she just heard from the witch in the play. If her favorite's illness is actually a curse, and if the witch increases her willpower, how quickly will her beloved Alex succumb to his illness? Although she feels her heart tightening in despair, there was nothing like this in the anime, so she believes she still has time to save her beloved. The play ends, and Marine comments to Arya how interesting and beautiful the performance was. The protagonist is startled by Marine's comment as she was still deep in thought and worried about the bad feelings she was experiencing. Arya quickly composes herself and asks Marine about the stories she read at the orphanage about the Ribloom and if she could take her to the orphanage, and Marine is surprised by her friend's unusual request. But Arianel explains that maybe this is an emergency, and she feels that if she doesn't start moving soon, she will regret it for the rest of her life. In the royal palace, the king shouts angrily at one of his knights, asking why the witch has not yet been found. The knight explains that they have already searched the entire kingdom, but so far there is no sign of the witch. But they will not give up. Stressed, the king orders them to find her and burn her at the stake immediately. Mentally, she knows that there is no more time to wait for a mythical flower to be found. And perhaps, if the witch is executed, Alex can be saved. Sometime later, the king is in his office, clearly exhausted. When Queen Oval approaches and questions what is happening because he looks so stressed, she goes to the king and he hugs her. Oval then asks if something happened to Alex, and the king says that he is in critical condition and that they urgently need to find the Ribloom or the witch. And with tear-filled eyes, he says that he does not want to lose his son, that he cannot let his beloved Alexandrite die. Oval strokes the king's hair, trying to comfort him. And with a wicked smile, she tells him that she is sure everything will work out and that he should not worry. The scene cuts to a beautiful church at night. Arya appears excited. The church she is in is the same one that appears in the game's background. And being able to see such an iconic place in the game in person is thrilling. Marine, who comes right behind her, explains that the orphanage is at the back of the church. She takes a misstep as she exits the carriage. Losing her balance, Marine begins to fall. Arya turns to try to help her friend, but Onyx quickly catches her before she falls, thus creating yet another fiery moment between the heroine and Onyx, leaving our poor protagonist frustrated. Arya quickly pulls Marine from Onyx's arms, thanking him in a somewhat rude manner. She continues with her teasing, claiming that what Onyx did was unnecessary, as she could have helped Marine if he hadn't interfered. He retorts that he couldn't leave things in her hands as that would be too dangerous for Marine, and the two glare at each other in irritation. Citrine sighs and asks them to stop the nonsense. A young cleric rushes toward the group and upon seeing Marine, seems relieved that she has returned. As he appears tense about something, Marine asks him if something happened. And what he reveals is bombshell news, that His Majesty Alexandrite Pendragon has been brought to the church and is in serious condition. Arianel feels a tightness in her chest upon hearing this. The group is led to where Alex is, and everyone is even more in shock. Arya cannot understand why this is happening. Onyx approaches, not believing what he is seeing. Arya, still thoughtful and in shock, ends up speaking out loud. There should still be time. There should still be time. As soon as he hears those words, Onyx immediately charges at Arya, demanding to know what she meant by that. And if she knew everything from the beginning. She knows she cannot reveal the truth, that she knows everything because she has played the game they are part of. Moreover, she understands that Alex always wanted to keep his illness a secret from everyone. The High Priest asks Arya if His Highness told her about his illness. He thinks for a moment before answering. She doesn't want to lie when it comes to Alex. So maybe she can tell the truth in a way that is believable. I have the ability to see things from the future through my dreams. Arianel says seriously to everyone present. Everyone is surprised by this fact. Theoretically, the game for her was her dream world. So technically, what she says is not a lie. Despite the silence of everyone, she continues explaining that just like Marine, who has the power to heal, she also has a power. Only her ability is to see future events in her dreams, and that is how she discovered Alexandrite's illness. The group remains silent after hearing this. Our protagonist wonders if perhaps she exaggerated a bit in her explanation, especially since Oracle dreams do not exist in the game. Onyx breaks the silence, still in an irritated tone, asking why she didn't say anything about Alex earlier. She tries to explain that she couldn't say anything without Alex's permission, but overwhelmed by anger and despair, he says that she should have gotten permission earlier because this was an important matter for the entire nation. Arya feels a bit wronged because, although no one knows, she has been working hard to prevent the death of her favorite since she came to this world. But she remains silent until the High Priest speaks up. He states that Alex did not want his brothers to know about his condition. Then, he stared intently at Arya and asked if this was something she already knew because of her prophetic dreams. Happy that someone finally understands her, she loudly says that the High Priest is right. The second prince wonders why his brother would do something like that. The High Priest explains that what afflicts Alexandrite is not a simple illness, but rather a curse cast by a witch. And if the rumor that the heir to the throne is cursed by a witch spreads, it could cause chaos in the succession to the throne. With this information, the pieces began to fall into place in Onyx's mind. He finally understood why his father and brother suddenly insisted that he become king. With determination in his eyes, he says that the future king is in danger, so they must seek a solution, a cure immediately. The High Priest says that no remedy will cure what Alexandrite has. Ribloom, Arya says aloud. Only the Ribloom flower is capable of curing Alexandrite. Both Onyx and Marine do not seem to understand why she would say something like that, since the Ribloom is something that only exists in fairy tales. But the high priest supports what Arya says, commenting that the church also believes the flower is the only solution. Even so, the others do not seem to believe it much. The Ribloom exists, I know that. I saw it in my dreams. Lady Marine and His Highness Alexandrite searched for the Ribloom together and were able to cure the illness, says Arianel with a confident voice. The high priest, seeing the protagonist's determination, asks if she will search for the Ribloom, and she affirms that she will. The man explains that Her Highness's life is hanging by a thread, and if they move away from Alexandrite, or if he is taken outside the sacred ground, his heart will surely stop beating. The high priest asks Arya when she had the dream, and when she says it was about 1.5 years ago, the man believes that Alex must have a little more time. But the curse began to grow much stronger exactly a week ago. Arya believed that the reason Alex had been more absent was due to work with the kingdom, but the high priest's words just confirmed that in fact, Alex is suffering from the worsening of the illness. The high priest continues explaining that the only justification for the worsening of the illness would be the fact that the witch has increased the strength of the curse. At that moment, Alex lets out a small groan of pain, putting everyone on alert. The high priest looks at Alex and becomes extremely worried. Although he is within sacred ground, it seems that the curse continues to spread through his body nonetheless. Marine runs to Alexandrite's side. She says she will use her healing power to help Alex and try to suppress the curse, even if just a little. She concentrates, and a strong golden light emanates from the two, followed by golden magical circles. Arya looks on hopefully, wondering if the marks will stop spreading. And at the same time, she is impressed by Marine's true power, the Saintess. The high priest warns everyone that they must find the Ribloom while Marine's power is holding the curse back. For the first time, Arya does not know what to do. She is lost. She was sure that the key to Alex's cure was for Marine to find the flower. But if Marine has to stay by Alex's side, it will be impossible for her to go on a journey to find the flower. And upon hearing herself wondering aloud what she should do, he asks if she saw where the flower is in her dreams. And she explains that the flower is in the Ice Temple, in the far north. He then questions if there is any specific reason why only Alex and Marine would be able to obtain the flower. And then our protagonist finally realizes that Marine only used her healing powers during the search for the Ribloom to alleviate Alex's pain, and nothing more. Thus, she herself could go in search of the flower instead of Marine. She looks at Satine, realizing how blind she was to something so obvious, and tells him that it doesn't have to be specifically Alex and Marine. So it's decided, says Satine to everyone. I will go with her to find Ribloom. And that's it for today, folks. I hope you enjoyed this story. I'm really enjoying this story, even though the protagonist sometimes annoys me with her blindness to obvious things, but she is progressing and improving her behavior as the story evolves. I found that quite interesting. I also really like the other characters. Marine is adorable. Onyx is also a caring brother. Citrine is quite interesting, sometimes acting like a villain, but I believe he has a good heart and seems to be becoming an important ally for our protagonist. Now Alex. I simply love him. The way his interest evolved into passion, although quick, is quite interesting. And I also love when the story shifts to his point of view, allowing us to understand a bit more of his feelings and actions. I just hope our protagonist realizes soon that he loves her. I can hardly wait for their kiss. And the people and the mother of Citrine, that queen, I'm sure she is involved in Alex's curse. That evil smile made it very clear. But what about you? What do you think and what are your theories? Tell me in the comments because I love chatting with you and hearing your opinions about the works we recap. And if you want more, don't forget to like the video and subscribe so you don't miss any new videos I post. The name of this work is I Still Don't Know About My Favorite Character's Unwavering Obsession, and our recap went up to chapter 20. And I will make a promise here for you. If this video hits 100,000 views, I will make part 2. So if you liked it, don't forget to share a lot. Kisses and see you next time.